Hello everyone, I'm Charlie from Doctor When, and welcome to another daily Doctor Who YouTube video. As you can most probably guess from this slide and the thumbnail of this video, today I will be ranking all 11 TV stories of Series 8 of New Who, so that is the revived era of Doctor Who since 2005. I've done 8 videos previously to this where I rank all the episodes in a certain series, 1 to 7, and since I've just finished Series 8 on my rewatch, I'm going to rank all the episodes in it because that's what I do. I noticed only 50% of you are subscribed. I'm more than happy with my current amount of subscribers, but I'd still really appreciate it if the other half of you subscribed and help me grow, as I'm still a small YouTuber. I'd also like to say I don't not like any of these episodes. I thought they were all really strong, and I'm not going to be including any of the Christmas specials surrounding it, so it's just going to be Deep Breath, Into the Dalek, Robot of Sherwood, Listen, Time Heist, The Caretaker, Kill the Moon, Mummy on the Orient Express, Flatline, In the Forest of the Night, and Dark Water, Death in Heaven, the 2-part finale. Without further ado, let's get into this video. With 11th place, it's Kill the Moon, which I've given a 7.0. First off, I'm going to say why it's last place. The main reason I don't really like it is that the Doctor is incredibly annoying in this. In the end, he just kind of leaves and makes Clara do this impossible decision, and he's just a bit of an idiot in this episode, to be honest. I was actually growing on, the 12th Doctor was growing on me quite a bit, but I feel this episode sort of ruined it for me a little bit before the finale. Either way, it was still an alright episode. I wasn't really surprised about the moon setting when a sci-fi show doesn't really have any other options. It just kind of does an episode on the moon. But I am a bit surprised it wasn't done earlier, actually. It is a really odd concept, the moon being an egg of this huge, parasitic creature. I quite like it, actually. I thought it was interesting. I don't think it's the most ridiculous thing this show's ever done. I don't think this episode is nearly as bad as people say it is, and I've got to admit it is impressive creature design, especially with the red and black spider things that are on the egg. I thought that was really good. And Clara having this outburst at the Doctor at the end, I did like that scene because the Doctor wasn't that nice in the episode, so I'm glad she did that. I honestly thought she was going to leave at the end of that, but I knew that she'd probably have Series 9, so there we go. That's why it's last place. Next up we have In the Forest of the Night with a 7.6. Lots of people don't really like this episode. It's definitely one of the weaker episodes, but I still don't think it's as bad as people say it is. It's an interesting concept, actually, the entire Earth being covered by a forest, and I think the scenes where ordinary streets which turned into forests, I thought that was really good, actually. The main reason I don't particularly like this episode that much is that the children that Clara and Danny have to look after, the school children, they are really annoying and don't really need to be there. This is still an alright episode. It's full of mystery, actually, like why are these trees here? But there's loads of really strange plot twists, like the animals coming after them. The Doctor just kind of stumbles into each conclusion, and it doesn't really make that much sense. Either way, it's still a pretty easy watch, and yeah, it's not that bad. Next up we have 9th place, which is Into the Dalek. I've given it an 8.4. I've seen lots of YouTubers give this quite high scores, like in the 9s, and even 9.5 one of them said. I don't really see how it's that good. It's still a good story. Any above 8 is pretty good. But the main reason why it's not as good, it's not very memorable. It's quite bland, actually. That's the main reason why it's not higher. But I do like the concept of a good Dalek. Like, all the Dalek knew was goodness, and I thought it was really interesting how they went inside the Dalek. I'm surprised they didn't do it earlier. This would have made for a great classic episode, actually. I do like the side characters. I think some of them would have been quite a good companion. But sadly, lots of them died, actually. This also developed the Missy arc, where when people died, they went to this place where Missy was waiting for them. We didn't get the conclusion to that until something like 10 episodes later. And it starts off the Clara and Danny's relationship arc, which lots of people don't like. I don't really mind it. I thought Danny was quite a good character, to be honest. Either way, it's a pretty strong episode and very easy watch. Next up we have 8th place, which is Robot of Sherwood. I've given this an 8.8. This is a historical episode and the only proper historical episode in this series, and honestly I really like it. The Doctor and Robin's arguments were hilarious, especially the scene where they were locked up in that prison. That was just really enjoyable, and sometimes I just go to rewatch this only to realise that that's the only scene I want to watch in the episode. But I do like how Clara does lots of the stuff on her own. She becomes a bit more independent in this series and starts doing things on her own, a lot like Donna. And I do quite like the creature design. I think it's pretty good with the purple glowing eyes on the robots. I thought that was quite good. It's got an interesting villain. The only reason why it's not higher is that the whole castle as a spaceship thing is a bit silly and quite a generic plot device. Either way, this is still a really good episode and very easy watch, just like lots of Series 8. Next up we have 7th place, which is The Caretaker. I've also given this an 8.8. This is one of the earthier stories. It's set pretty much entirely on Earth, which I quite like actually. I'm quite a big fan of the earthy episodes, which is probably why I like the 3rd Doctor's era. I think the Scovox Blitzer there is an interesting villain. Lots of people don't like it, saying it's just a generic robot, but I actually quite like it. I think we had loads of complex and interesting villains. I think it was just time for a robot with lasers. I think I like this episode as well because Clara reveals her secret about time travel to Danny, and the Doctor is quite funny actually, how he has a regular job at the school, and Clara's reaction to his announcement is priceless actually. It's very tense and mysterious because you don't get the first main battle between the Doctor and Scovox Blitzer until around 30 minutes into this episode. Either way, it's really good and really great episode as well. I do like lots of the episodes in this series. Next up we have Time Heist, which I've given an 8.9. This is in 6th place, so pretty much exactly in the middle. The starting is quite confusing and timey-wimey, which I use in lots of my videos because of the 10th Doctor. I really like this episode. We don't really get the conclusion of the whole, why they're breaking into this bank until the very end. And I do quite like the whole heist aspect of this episode. I thought it was really good. Good concept of them breaking into the most secure bank in the galaxy. I thought that was really good. The Teller is an interesting villain, how he senses thoughts. So it's a lot like with the Weeping Angels. Don't blink. With him you've got to don't think, and it's really good actually. It's got good side characters with the shapeshifter and the cyborg. I thought they would have been great companions again. And the memory worm scene is quite good, how they completely forget all the things they did to prepare for the bank robbery, and they use the memory worms to hide from the Teller. I thought that was a really smart idea. Next up we have Deep Breath, which I've given a 9 exactly. This is a great introduction to the 12th Doctor. It's his very first episode, and lots of people actually didn't like this, mainly because the 12th Doctor was in it and replaced the 11th. It's a very different tone to the 11th Doctor's era, and obviously the Doctor's very different himself. The 11th and 12th Doctors are basically opposites, and it was quite interesting seeing Clara's reaction to him. The Half-Faced Man is a great villain. I quite like the idea of him going through time, collecting parts to build himself his own body. I thought that was quite good. The Victorian setting I usually find quite boring because I find it overused, like in the Snowmen and the Crimson Horror, but this one is actually really good. It doesn't rely too much on the fact it's set then. The dinosaur is a bit silly, how she swallows the TARDIS but then spits it out, but I quite like it actually. It's not the most ridiculous thing to come from this show. It starts off the Missy arc as well, with the Promised Land and the Half-Faced Man arriving in the Nethersphere. I thought that was quite good. And it has a Paternoster gang, which I really like. It's actually their final main appearance. Overall, this is a really strong episode. Anyway, next up, we have 4th place Flatline, which I've given a 9.1. Lots of people don't really like this episode, and I don't see why. I actually really enjoyed this episode. First off, we have the creative creature design. I like the whole concept of them being two-dimensional beings, try to build themselves a three-dimensional body, and that scene towards the end where they kind of start to go into the third dimension. I actually really like that. Clara is as good as always, and this is almost a Doctor-light episode. The Doctor's trapped in this tiny TARDIS, and that's really funny, actually. I do quite like this episode. It's one of the most memorable parts of Series 8, and I think Rigsy would be a great companion. I actually class him as a companion because he returns in Series 9 in the episode Face the Raven. This is actually scarier than others. I do really quite like the scenes with the two-dimensional beings. I thought that the villains were really good in this, and I'd love them to return. And I do quite like the Doctor's speech towards the end, with the whole man who stops the monsters thing. I do quite like that. Overall, this is a really strong episode, and I would happily watch this any day. Next up, we have Listen with a 9.1. I've also given this a 9.1 because this is just a brilliant episode. Again, it's a horror episode, first of all. We have this scene in the children's home with the unknown thing under the blanket, and I quite like it. It's very Midnight-esque how we never actually see the villain. It's just like, yeah, you never see it, and that's what makes it all the more creepy. It's a very strong, memorable episode. I do quite like how the Doctor as a child is featured in it, but we never actually see his face. And it ties it to the Danny arc as well, with Danny's like great grandson or something, Orson Pink. And this is a really, really good episode. I honestly really enjoyed this. Next up we have second place, Mummy on the Orient Express, which I've given a 9.2. I think, first of all, the engineer on the train, Perkins, he would make a great companion, actually. Lots of people have said this. And I do quite like how Clara's working on her own to figure out the secret of the sarcophagus on the hidden room in the train where it's all dark with that other person. And the Foretold is a brilliant villain. I quite like it. I'm surprised they didn't do a villain that was based off of Mummy earlier. He's called the Foretold, and once you see it, you have 66 seconds to live. I think the Foretold should come back, maybe even as a recurring villain. I think that would actually be really good. And it can be argued as a horror story. It's got a very claustrophobic setting, a lot like Cold War and Blink. And we never actually find out who the actual villain who's orchestrating the entire thing is. We hear a male voice, but that just could be an illusion. Personally, I like to believe that it's the Master, in the form of Missy. I always like to think that, but we never actually find out the actual truth. In first place, we have Dark Water, Death in Heaven, with 9.5. Spoilers, Danny died in this. Clara's boyfriend Danny, he died, and this is probably the darkest, saddest episode to ever come from Doctor Who. He gets converted into a Cyberman after he dies, and the dead are basically resurrected by Missy, who we now find out is a Master, and they all become Cybermen who basically plan to take over the world. We have the Master reveal in this, which I was sort of expecting towards the start of Dark Water, but I didn't confirm it until later in the episode. I do like the Cyberman reveal, how the doors close and it looks like a Cyberman's head, and the music starts playing. I didn't expect that. I do like the whole concept of an afterlife in the Nethersphere. I thought that was really good, but this is one of the darkest Doctor Who stories ever, with Don't Cremate Me and Danny being a Cyberman and having to turn off his emotional inhibitor. I thought that was just really, really sad. Either way, I really like the Cybermen in this, and this is a really good episode, and it brings back Unit. So there's not really much wrong with this episode at all. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and don't forget to subscribe. Next time, I will rank all 9 New Who Cyberman stories. Stay tuned for that, and I'll see you then. Goodbye.